And welcome back to The Scoop, folks. I'm Steve Boyce. Great to be back here live with you from the Experiential Marketing Summit. Love that segment on community-based engagement. We've got more great content, interviews, and hot takes for you today on The Scoop all day here from EMS live from the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. And folks, now we've got a very special treat for you. I am so excited to be with our next speaker, Matt Grant, who is Vice President of live and digital production and technology with Impact XM. Matt Grant, welcome to The Scoop. Great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. It's been a while.
I know, right?
It's kind of nice to be here with everyone here. It's incredible. Great feeling.
Now, is this your first time at EMS, Matt, or have you been to the Experiential Marketing Summit before?
I have been to the Experiential Marketing Summit before.
Okay.
But it's my first time speaking at this event.
Fantastic.
And first time doing this. So.
Well, it's our first time doing The
bit,
Scoop.
you know, a little bit excited.
We're having a fun time here on The Scoop. And by the way, before we jump into the content, I'm so looking forward to our interview. I have to compliment you on your fine sartorial choice here. Folks, we didn't plan this on The Scoop, but Matt and I are simpatico on our passion for data. So we're going to get into that in just a few moments.
Awesome.
But I'd love to just open with just a couple of general questions, let our audience get to know you,
Sure.
Matt. Tell us a little bit about what you do at Impact XM. Tell us about the organization and the value you bring.
Yep. So I work in our live and digital production side, as you mentioned. And what we do is we do a lot of production for live events. So anything from a conference or a interactive or an intercept right up to live full-scale multi-day events and trade shows. So the thing about Impact XM is that we also have a fabrication side as well. So we actually build environments and build trade show booths.
Fantastic.
In addition to actually producing the events as well. So
wonderful. So you've got the soft side of marketing and events, and you've got the hard side, the actual production.
Correct.
Now, we may get into the production side because I'm always curious about fabrication facilities. So much cool stuff goes on there. Tell us a little bit about Impact XM, the organization.
Sure.
How big are you? Where are you guys located? What kind of services do you offer and stuff?
Yeah, so we're about almost 300 employees now, but we're all over North America. So our offices are in Las Vegas, so right here. We have an office in Toronto, Canada, and also we have an office in Dayton, New Jersey. So we have footprints pretty much all over North America. We execute globally. And we're on the live and digital. So obviously over the last 2 years, it's been a little bit interesting.
Oh yeah.
We had to flex some muscles that we never really had in place before. So we did a lot of digital work though, and I'm so proud of what our team was able to accomplish over the last 2 years. So we came out of it with a tremendous amount of experience and a lot to share with the industry.
Wonderful. And we're going to pick up on that theme in a little bit, talking about where do we go next as we come out of this pandemic. But I want to make sure for folks who are on site here in Vegas, you are presenting a keynote later today in the afternoon, and I'm going to read the title, Maximizing Measurement Best Practices for Attendee Data Capture and Reporting for Virtual, Hybrid, and In-Person. I couldn't think of a more valuable session for anyone to attend. Matt, give us a little bit of a preview. What are some of the key messages you're going to share in your session this afternoon?
Well, I'm just impressed that you were able to rattle that all off, because that is quite a mouthful. Of a session title.
Yes, and I will give props to our production assistant Madison for preparing these dossiers. They've been very helpful for yours truly.
Yeah.
Let's get into your session a little bit. What are you going to focus on today?
Yeah, so we are going to be talking about measurement sort of from top down. So I think a lot of us in this industry, we tend to settle into our routines. We might kind of forget a little bit about tying back our measurement to our KPIs and our objectives. So that's really important. So we're going to talk a lot about sort of that top-down approach of establishing your objectives, establishing your benchmarks, and then aligning your strategies towards that. So it's great. We're going to go through some case studies. I'm excited because it's the first time in a while that I've been presenting, and I'm really looking forward to going through my content. I think there's going to be a lot for people to take away.
Wonderful. Well, that sounds like a great session. If I can break away from the broadcast, I will be in the audience participating. If not, I will want a personal presentation later in the future.
No problem.
All right,
happy
great.
to do it.
Now, before we get into the data side, and that's going to be the bulk of our conversation because there's so much value I think we can bring to brand marketers on that front. I want to get your perspectives on, what you guys felt in the 2 years of the pandemic, Impact XM. You teed this up a little bit. You guys flexed and built some muscles that maybe you didn't have before.
Yeah.
What were some of the key lessons that you folks learned at Impact XM through the pandemic, and now as we start to come out of this and back to more of a normal state? Love to hear your perspectives on all of that. So how were the 2 years for you guys and your clients?
Yeah, so I mean, immediately we noticed that there was a a real drive to be able to continue to communicate with the audiences. So events were canceled. What do you do? And a lot of our team, the team that works with me, we have a lot of experience in production, and we have some digital expertise in that we do digital for physical spaces. So we parlayed that into a bit of a craft around virtual events. So I think one thing we learned for sure is you got to have great partners.
Yes.
And we have some terrific partners that we executed with over the course of the pandemic, and we still work with them today. Some of them are here.
Any you care to give a shout out to?
Meeting Play is a tremendous partner of ours that we've done lots of work with. In fact, one of the case studies I'm going to show today is from something we did with Meeting Play.
Wonderful.
And Code Exitos, they're a great partner of ours as well, helped us to deliver a lot during the pandemic.
Fantastic.
They've been a great boost to us as well. But data became very important too, because we're so used to, all the event marketers that we work with are used to the traditional ways of measurement. Like, people threw bums in seats, business cards, that kind of stuff, right? So we had to come up with another way of measuring everything. And we used a lot of analytics, a lot of web-based tools. A lot of our partners provided us with the ability to measure, but we also kind of learned Google Analytics overnight and spent a lot of time learning that.
Nice.
I got to tell you, some of the people on my team, the way that they were able to come together and use that to inform decision making, it was incredible.
Unbelievable. And I'm so excited to hear how you guys had are nimble and agile.
Yeah.
Leveraged your strengths on the digital side, but were able to parlay that into more of a virtual and digital only experience and solution offering.
Yep.
Was that pivot pretty important in your ability to continue to serve your clients who had to be searching for what do we do now, right?
Totally,
Our events are gone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we everybody was calling it a big pivot, right? Great pivot. And that word probably got overused a little bit over that period of time, but we really did. We had to pivot. What do you do, right? So we quickly became experts in virtual events and virtual environments, and we still carry that forward because we're still seeing an appetite for hybrid experiences, virtual environments. Customers are thinking about whether or not they should actually travel to a show and invest in being at a show, but there's an opportunity to have a virtual footprint, right?
Yes.
And you can engage with people in a different way. You can extend your reach beyond the walls to reach people who couldn't attend the show. So I think that's probably going to stay with us for a while.
So I'm really glad that you raised this subject, Matt, because I think this is on the minds of a lot of brand marketers here at EMS and beyond. We're coming out of this pandemic. People are so excited to be in person again. Hey, we're all humans. We want to talk to each other, see your smiling face, right? It's such a great experience. And yet, I think a lot are wondering, do we have to continue with this virtual thing and this digital thing? Because I think for a lot of organizations, that was a real challenge. They didn't have a lot of experience with it, didn't necessarily know how to manage that, relied on partners like Impact XM. So are you of the belief that we're going to continue having to offer virtual and digital programming for our communities and audiences? I think so. I believe that it will persist. Absolutely. I think that there's a definite mixture. It's become part of the toolkit, right? So prior to the pandemic, digital was there. It was a tool that we used, and we had a lot of success with it. But now these virtual and hybrid events and experiences, we have to continue to use them. We have to build upon them, and they're now part of a sort of the mainstay of the marketer's toolkit. Absolutely. And I've heard some folks say that in any community that you might be marketing to or promoting to or looking to engage with, there may be a natural cohort. I've heard ranges from 25 up to 50% of any community might actually prefer to engage digitally with a brand. Could that be the case? I mean, is that possible? I agree. I don't have numbers to back it up, but I know that I can tell you from what I've seen and what I've observed is that people are responding really well to that. I mean, I was just having a conversation last night with somebody about they bought real estate in the Metaverse, and and now they're going to rent it out to people to execute events in the Metaverse. And so brands are already activating. You just blew my mind. I almost can't even comprehend what that is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was cheaper than Toronto real estate. So I don't know, but we'll see. I haven't bought any myself. Fantastic. There's so much to learn there. We could do a whole segment just on the Metaverse. It's very interesting. And so as brands contemplate these challenges, right, as they're looking to try to find the right balance between in-person and digital engagement, is data something that can help them answer that question? Yeah, I think so. I think what I'm going to talk about this afternoon is about making data sort of the mainstay of your program, right? So quite often measurement gets thought of inside of an event, right? What are we going to measure at this event? But really it's like, what are we going to measure at a whole? What is our program going to measure?
And then each event is measured against that barometer, that yardstick, that KPI, that benchmark. So I think if we do more of that type of measurement, we can start to reveal some of the insights that you were sharing, like there's perhaps a portion of the audience that wants to be engaged virtually versus in person, right?
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, and we're going to come back to this in a second. Folks, for those of you just joining us here on The Scoop, I'm Steve Boyce. I'm sitting here with Matt Grant, Vice President of Live and Digital Production and Technology with Impact XM. Matt's going to be presenting a keynote later today at the Experiential Marketing Summit. And Matt, I want to dive in now. Let's get into the data.
Sure,
right?
sounds good.
This is so exciting. I'm going to even cast aside my dossier here because I don't need it for this portion. Let's start with your the last point you made just a second ago. You seem to suggest that when folks look at measurement, they look at it very narrowly, like for this particular in-person event or this particular webcast. But you're prescribing more of a comprehensive, holistic view.
Correct.
That seems like a fairly new approach in event measurement.
Yeah.
Do you find that folks are surprised by that recommendation? Are they intimidated by that at all? What are the conversations you're having around that?
I think that's an interesting point. I do think that it can sometimes feel a little bit overwhelming because sometimes marketers are trying to work with broad teams, geographically dispersed teams. Sure. And they've all got to try to find some way to align on KPIs and benchmarks to measure their programs, right? So what I'm proposing is not an easy task by any means, but I think it's going to yield the most promising results, because when you look at the totality of your marketing spend, the best way to measure it and evaluate it is by looking at your entire program, right? So what are you measuring against? What is the standard for what you're executing, and how do we measure against it, right? And so that's important. I do feel like when we take an approach, specifically at Impact XM, we look at we take a step back with the customers and we try to understand sort of their holistic program and what they're trying to achieve. And then we ladder up the tactics to that and create KPIs and benchmarks to measure.
That's excellent.
So over time, we're able to prove out the success, or we're able to tweak mid-program. Actually, one of the case studies I'm talking about today talks about how we actually failed on the first outing, and then we adjusted it.
Failure can be very valuable.
And then we had success at the end. So
fantastic. Yeah. I forget who said, but fail fast.
Fail fast.
Fail fast and get to the next iteration. Yeah. Certainly a very entrepreneurial approach.
Yep.
And one that I think marketers need to be more agile. But if you don't have the data that shows that it didn't work, you don't know when to make the change.
That's just it. Yeah. The data. It's all about transparency and using the data to make really non-biased decisions, right? Because at the end of the day, even failure can be a success, right? We measured it, we understood what didn't work, and now we can make it right.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm gonna raise potentially a controversial point here.
Sure.
And some of the experience that I've had with event marketers is they tend to do the same thing over and over, but try to tweak it a little bit. And I think we miss the opportunity for transformation and innovation. Now, there's a comfort level in doing things that you know how to do, but it sounds to me like you're helping guide your clients strategically to do something new and big and find, and you use the term inform, right? Yeah. Let the data inform those strategic choices.
Yep.
Is that in fact how you're advising your clients, and what's the response you're getting?
I can tell you a funny story. Sometimes it's a simple question of how are you guys measuring success? How are you guys measuring the performance of your marketing programs? And you'd be surprised sometimes the answer is we're not entirely sure. And I've had people.
Are they willing to be honest with you on that?
No, and I think it's perfect to be honest, right? But I think that sometimes there's a hesitation on the behalf of perhaps an agency or someone in my position to ask that question, because maybe it seems like a silly question to ask. But I can tell you that quite often, more often than not, people are not looking at the totality of the program in regards to measurement. So, I do think that it is important. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I love the strategic approach. Now, on the one hand, you've got the strategic approach of looking at their whole campaign, focusing on the business outcomes and KPIs. But as we both know, Matt, when you get into data, you very quickly get into the bits and bytes of how do we make this happen. Now, you talked about a number of the partners that support you. I've worked with a number of different organizations. Look, we know how the modern event works. Often brands are using multiple technologies to deliver experiences. And as I'm often fond of saying, even an in-person event is a digital experience, right? We've got badges that get scanned and sessions and scanning and so forth. So events spin off a tremendous amount of data. What are the big challenges that brands face in first getting control of that data? Is that a big challenge for them, right? Because you can't activate it until you get control of it.
Yeah, I think it has to be part of your plan on the onset. So, you know, I think companies, there's no shortage of tools available at their disposal to measure. I think sometimes the challenges that they face is how do you integrate them and have them communicate with one another, right?
Right.
So, you know, for example, some of the tools that we've built for our customers, we have to develop APIs or, you know, ways of communicating with their CRMs or things like that, right? So, but that has to be something you think about at the beginning, right? So what we typically try to do is map out sort of the data sort of ecosystem.
Nice.
You know, what are the tools? What are the ways that data is being passed? What's being captured? And you kind of map it out. If you can imagine like a Visio diagram.
Oh, sure.
Right? And we use that to kind of try to understand, okay, how is the information going to flow? How's it going to pass from here to here? And what comes out the other end, right? So it really does start with a lot of planning at the front end. But when it comes together, it's magic, right?
Right.
Because everything talks to one another. The data comes out the other end and we can prove or make inferences or make adjustments on the fly. And that's what gets me, you get the shivers, right?
That's
you get
great.
excited about
Oh, yeah. When you see those insights popping out of the data, right? It's really exciting. Now, that process of mapping that ecosystem, love the term, that's going to involve more than the marketing team at a brand, right? So you're getting involved with the technologists, the IT people.
Absolutely.
You're kind of expanding the stakeholders that you're working with to help them achieve their outcomes. How does that process work? Is that kind of new territory for your brand clients to open the gates to their IT teams?
Yeah, I think the more and more that these data programs become, you know, I would say I've probably watched about 5 presentations even just in the last day or so, companies that are talking about how they're capturing people's data and using that data. So it's very important, clearly, because we're talking
People
about
are catching on.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And so I think that, you know, in terms of getting brands like sort of to try to understand what they need to be doing, we just try to consult and provide them with what, you know, the most information we can possibly give them.
Right. And are the tech teams generally willing? Are they game to play along? Or do they gate the data at all? Sometimes it's hard to get to.
I find that when we pull in all of the different stakeholders, it's very collaborative.
Okay.
You know, like you said, IT, the data team, sales, marketing, they all have a role to play.
Yes.
And we find that, you know, once they're in the room and everybody's talking about exactly how we're going to execute this, it actually has gone very well. And I think the reason why it goes so well is that everybody's informed and understands what we're trying to accomplish and achieve, so that there's no surprises. You know, I'll admit that we've had projects where sometimes, you know, one department wasn't engaged, and then you get a little bit down the path, and they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, we didn't talk about how you were going to be doing that," and then it becomes an issue, right? That you've got to sort of work around, right?
Right.
So learning from that mistake, you know, we try to bring everybody into the mix and make sure that everybody's informed about the strategy.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, it's a great way to get stakeholders aligned, right? You got multiple stakeholders that need to be to generate success. And I think the one thing that's great about data is it's fact-based. And it takes, as you said earlier, it takes sort of the subjective decision making out of the process and allows brands to be more objective in terms of how they make decisions about foregoing programs. That to me is a great way to bring alignment, because it's hard to argue with facts, right?
It's absolutely true. I mean, the numbers are very you know, they're absolutely supportive in the decision making, right? We also do believe in qualitative. You know, you need to capture qualitative feedback, sound bites, comments. You know, all that stuff is important as well, and it factors into the decision-making process. But data is also the backbone of that. Like the numbers is the backbone of that, right?
That's right.
So it's very important.
Now, once you got the data together, and you've worked with your client, and you've figured out the ecosystem, and you're connecting the dots and bringing the data together, which has got to be a massive task unto itself. Maybe you've got dashboards that you're talking about, right? You're visualizing this data. At some point, Matt, the data conversation turns to a now, what does this mean conversation? Now, tell us a little bit about that. How do you help your clients interpret the data and draw those insights out?
Sure. So that is also a collaborative effort, because, you know, we try to understand as much as we possibly can about our client's business.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, we're there to help support and help them draw inferences from those numbers and from the data.
Right.
So ultimately, we work very closely with our clients in reviewing the data and making, insightful decisions from them. And, that is very much a collaborative process. We work together on that. And it's, I guess that's just it is. It's a very collaborative process.
There's sort of an art to it,
There's
right?
an art,
There's a
yeah.
science in the data,
Yeah.
and then there's an art in the interpretation process.
True. And in terms of visualizing the data, I mean, we have a variety of different tools at our disposal, but we've done a lot of work with our clients to build dashboards where they can refresh the data in real time, and you get the graphs and the charts. But that is also very much done in consultation with the client, right?
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, we want to understand what is it that you need to show to your boss, or what does your boss need to show to their boss,
right?
So that we can make sure that you can print that out
That's
and
right.
put that in your presentation.
Love it.
So that's what we work towards.
Love it. Now, there are other key stakeholders that event organizers have to focus on, right? I want to talk a little bit about sponsors.
Sure.
Because we've heard a lot, we certainly heard a lot through the pandemic, sponsor concern about what's the ROI on my virtual or digital engagement, right? And we always heard that in the in-person side of events as well. What's my ROI? Sponsors are a critical stakeholder for event organizers, drives some of the main revenue streams. Are sponsors eager to get more data on the performance of how participants engage with their brand?
Yeah, so I mean, when we've executed virtual events, just straight up attendance numbers are not going to cut it, right? And we can't just send over the Excel spreadsheet with a list of people who attended. It's what were they looking at? How long did they look at? Who did they interact with? What were they engaging with?
Right.
Those are the types of measurements that you can get from a virtual platform that you can't necessarily get in an in-person experience. Right? So sponsors actually wind up in a well-executed event, wind up with some really interesting data, because they can also get a sense of how long was someone looking at that specific piece of content, and what did they focus and dwell on, and then they can use that information to then follow up with that individual or follow up with that organization. So I find that in some cases is almost more valuable data than knowing someone came by your booth and threw their business card down.
Absolutely, to get the tote bag or the
the water bottle.
By the way, we got some great tchotchkes here on the scoop. I'm sure you guys do at Impact XM as well. Really fascinating because that the context of the dwelling is really critical, right? Because I could fly by a booth and not really care, but if I'm dwelling on a piece of content or some other assets that a sponsor brand has put forth, that's going to give them insight into specifically what I'm interested in. And then that informs the conversation going forward.
What's sticky? What was the content or what was the material that we put up on our platform that was sticky and people spent time on?
It's great.
That matters.
It really does matter. Okay, Matt, people want to know. They want tips and tricks, right? So we got brands out there. We got marketers who are so jazzed up right now because of what you've shared, Matt, and they want to become data-driven. I know you do, folks, right? You want to be a data-driven organization. What are your tips? Are there pitfalls to avoid? How do they get started? Are there organizational change elements to becoming data-driven? How do people get started moving down this path?
Sure. So I think first and foremost, I always say think big. And what I mean by thinking big is think about your program and not just the tactic.
Love it.
So your tactics roll up into your program. So when you're thinking about measurement, think about what is the success of your total program going to look like, and then you'll know how to measure each of your activities.
Got it.
The other thing that I think is really important is marketers should think about asking the same questions, or at least the same 4 or 5 questions if they're doing, say, like a survey. Ask the same 4 to 5 questions at every event and tailor some of the questions outside of that, right? You can ask specific sort of audience-specific questions, but ask those same 4 or 5 so that you can develop some sort of benchmark or KPI that every event is measured towards, right?
I love that suggestion.
Right?
It's sort of like a net promoter score kind of approach, right? That consistent questioning. Fantastic. What are the pitfalls as they go down the data-driven path? Can they go it alone? Is that a pitfall, or do they need a partner like Impact XM to guide them?
I think most companies should engage with a partner that has expertise. And I'm not just saying that foolishly or selfishly, I should say. I do think that it's important to engage a partner to help, because there are companies that do a really great job. Many of them are here. And they understand what it takes to measure the success of programs. So you can't go wrong by engaging a partner for support. But that being said, there's a lot that, you know, a company can do to get ready. I mean, align your teams internally.
Yep.
You know, if you have a sort of sales and data team that's focused on the analysis of leads, let's say, or whatever the case may be, bring everybody into the room and talk about it. Yeah, exactly. And then think big.
Yes.
You know, think about what you're going to measure repeatedly, and then start to develop what your goals and objectives are and how you're going to measure those.
Fantastic.
Right.
Matt, you've laid out the perfect approach and plan for all of the brands. If you want to become data-driven, folks, rewatch this segment, listen to Matt's advice, and you're going to be down the path. And then give him a call, and he'll help you out further. Matt, we got a few seconds left in our segment here. I know folks are going to want to get back in touch with you, connect, learn more. Do you have hashtags, websites? How can they get a hold of Matt Grant in the future?
So if they want to get a hold of me, the best way to do it is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So find me on LinkedIn. I'm always answering.
Great.
I'm on there a fair amount. And then if anybody wants to get in touch, just go to impactxm.com and drop a link, and they'll be able to find me.
Wonderful.
Yeah, they'll get through to me.
I'm sure they will. Fantastic. Well, folks, if you're here on site at the Experiential Marketing Summit, don't miss Matt's keynote speech presentation later this afternoon. And folks, if you didn't catch the full segment here live, we will run this on demand, of course, on The Scoop. I want to thank Matt Grant again, Vice President of Live and Digital Production and Technology with ImpactXM. Fantastic segment. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives with us. Hope you have a great event here at EMS.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
All right, great. We'll be back with more great content soon. Don't go away.